Hi, welcome to Write More Light. My name is Sarah, here with the Midwest Writing Center, and today we are talking about my first workshop. So this is a video for folks who aren't totally sure what workshopping is, or they haven't gone to a workshop because they're nervous to, or they're not sure how to participate when they're in workshop. So buckle up, it's going to be informational. Of course, as usual, at the end, I will give an update on what to expect from the Midwest Writing Center in the near future, and then we will have a free write. So that's the plan for today. So, cat, hi baby. The first thing is there should be established ground rules in any established workshop. These may not be presented to you at the beginning of a meeting, so it's probably useful to ask the workshop leader or someone who goes to this workshop regularly how the workshop usually goes. I think it's important in general to feel empowered to ask those questions of the folks who are regulars in the workshop that you're interested in or participating in. Also, you can gauge a lot based on the answers you receive and the manner in which the answers are given. Because, occasionally you'll see a group that's not welcoming to newcomers, or not welcoming to folks who aren't like knowledgeable about workshopping. And when you ask them, hey, like what format is your workshop group done in? Or, do I need to send stuff in a specific format, whatever. You can see how welcoming they may be from their answers. That can be useful. Your workshop, So because it may not be stated outright, I'm going to go through what the usual ground rules are, and also with the caveat that they're not universal. And I would say generally you can tell by observing just like the first person to go in workshop how things normally go. That's not, again, not universal, but observing is useful. So traditional workshops exist in a very specific way. Usually everyone in the workshop has seen the work in advance, not necessarily. There are groups in which you share your work, or whoever shares their work, right there on the spot. And if like you're doing it over Zoom or you're doing it in person, everyone can see a copy while the writer is reading their work. And then the author will sit quietly and receive feedback, probably taking notes. It's very useful to take notes. In a lot of workshops, the critics, the rest of the group will write all over the piece of paper and then hand it to the writer, but the writer's probably taking notes the whole time because it's really important that you take what works for you and leave what doesn't. So if you're taking notes as opposed to just receiving everything, you can really do better discerning about what's going to work for you in the moment. Usually the writer in this setting cannot respond or answer to anything that's being said about their work. And that is really hard if you're not used to it. Occasionally, and this is how I like to do it, the writer can respond at the end. If somebody has a question or like totally if somebody misunderstands something, you can take that to mean, there's something that's unclear here, right? Especially if a lot of people misunderstand. But if somebody asked a question, or if you have specific questions as the writer, I would say if it were a group that I worked in, I could share that after folks are done giving feedback. I would also say, and this is advice I would give everyone who is bringing work to be workshopped, reflect and think in advance about what you want to get out of the workshop. You're bringing this piece that you worked on that you think, could use some help, some outside perspective. So it's really, really useful to think about why you're bringing this piece. You know, my reason historically has kind of been like, well, it's not done and I don't know what to do with it, but that's not good enough. Um, you're not going to get great direction if you don't have direction. And you don't have to have that direction right now, but it is really useful to think on, or maybe even journal on what you want to get out of this piece or the feedback. Maybe there's a few new things that you're trying and you want to know if they work. Maybe you're like so frustrated with this piece that you can't see it clearly and you would really like to see how others see it. Whatever it is you want to get out of it, it doesn't really matter. It's just really, really, really useful to have that in mind when you receive feedback so that you know what feedback is going to work for you, what feedback is going to be relevant. Granted, of course, it's also great when you get feedback that's unexpected or not what you're specifically looking for, because, you need to know in general what the reception is. It's also then, of course, useful to know what you're struggling with the piece and what you do love about the piece, why this piece is worth revisiting for you or carrying forward. You're bringing it to people in the process of getting it closer to being finished, right? So there's something worth keeping for you, and it's useful to know that. It's useful to know what you won't compromise on and what you will, and it's good to know that before other people see it, because if you're not sure, it's much easier to take all of the criticism, and that may make the piece lose some integrity or lose its heart. It might not, but it very much could. I would say it's great to, I already said this a little bit, ask questions of like the schedule, the format, the time block, right? So if I say it's going to be a 2-hour workshop, but that's all you know about it, you might ask, okay, how much time does each person get? Or is there a specific order? Like, do new people go first? Do new people go last? These are all things that have the potential to be different in every single group. So totally useful to ask questions. In the group that I am currently running for the Midwest Writing Center Writer Studio, I really like to mix workshop styles. I would say, technically speaking, that I am technically speaking, that I'm the workshop leader, but I want to make it clear that that's not a hierarchical position. That's not a position of power. It's really, I planned on talking about it a little later. It's really just the person who is steering the conversation. So, cat. It's going to happen too that, especially if you're joining a casual workshop group, that people come from different workshopping backgrounds and they will bring their experience with them. Not everyone has been trained in how to workshop or knows what a traditional workshop looks like. It's just another reason it's useful to state the ground rules in advance. I think it's really fun to mix workshop styles because there's a lot to be gained from knowing different workshop styles. And there are many different ways to accept and give feedback that translate really, really differently depending on the workshop style. Again, I'm just focusing on traditional stuff, the stuff that you can generally expect to see when you join a new workshop, but there are a lot of different things out there. And when you get a mix of people, especially, like I said, in a casual group, there's going to be a little bit of like a gentle messiness to it because people are coming from such different backgrounds and have such different ideas about what workshopping looks like, even if they're all based around, the same traditional workshop. The way, your previous workshop worked was based on the personalities in that group. And those personalities are not all here with us, right? So the workshop leader's job is to keep the workshop moving, keep the conversation productive, and possibly to translate or interrogate feedback that might be unclear or unhelpful. A workshop leader is not necessary, or at least not strictly necessary. I would say there's totally a potential for an issue of power or hierarchy, which is not helpful. And if your group knows each other well, knows each other's group, has a good chemistry, whatever, nobody needs to do it. And the group will keep moving. And anybody can pop in with a comment about like how to keep it moving, how to keep it productive. It doesn't have to be a one person's role. The reason that I said that technically I think I would qualify as that person with Writer's Studio is because I'm just the person who's running it, right? I open the meeting, I start the meeting, and I close the meeting. So it's not that I have more power or more experience or more skill. It's just that I'm the person with the Zoom code, really. Something that also happens in some groups is people switch off who is the workshop leader, which is really cool. If you must have one, it's useful for that role to change people. You know what I mean? Especially if you feel like your group needs that and you want to keep a hierarchy from existing. So we're going to do shout out to MWC friend and staff member Skylar Alexander. I stole some notes from her Don't Be a Dick in Workshop lesson and turned it really into a bare bones thing. Sorry, Skylar, I don't mean to bastardize your work. But here is some cliff notes from Skylar Alexander's Don't Be a Dick in Workshop. I think it's How to Not Be a Dick. Proofread your work. That's an important one. You're bringing an early draft. You should not be bringing a rough draft because you're going to undermine your own workshop and the feedback that you're getting if you have like typos or grammatical errors that trip people up. So just proofread it. Just proofread it. Your workshop, your time, and your quality of feedback are going to be way better if you just proofread it. Also, don't bring a completed final draft. That's not productive. You're wasting your own time. You're wasting everyone else's time. I've never actually experienced this happening, except like the first time you meet people and you like want to impress them with your skills and you're afraid to show them something rough. Don't give into that. You're here to get feedback. You're here to get better. You're here to learn. And there's a few things that can happen when you bring a final draft. Either you'll get no feedback or you'll get feedback that'll upset you, right? Because you think the piece is done. It's also possible that from that you learn that you're not done, but it's just stuff to keep in mind. Don't bring a final draft. Proofread before you bring it. It's really, really, really important to remember that you are not your work. With art, I think we find some overlap sometimes where our identity is very closely involved with the art that we make, and that's not necessarily useful. That's definitely not useful. It can in fact be a huge problem. So make sure just to keep that in mind. Getting criticism, good or bad, on your work is not criticism, good or bad, on you as a person. That's just really, really important to keep in mind. If you're too attached to the work, don't bring it. I have that happen to me sometimes where I know that the piece is just too raw, it's too emotional, it's too personal. And if I bring it to workshop and someone criticizes it, I'm not going to benefit because I'm going to feel attacked or I'm going to feel defensive. And that doesn't allow me to receive feedback and it doesn't allow me to be present. And I'm wasting the time of the people around me if I'm not going to listen to them, or at least respect what they have to say. So just shelve the pieces that are too personal until you have the space to really work on them and hear what people have to say about the work, because it is not about you. If your workshop group is not well established as like a long-term, long-form group, and since this is your first workshop that we're talking about, it's not, don't bring long work. Bring short works or excerpts from longer pieces that can stand alone. That's, I would say, and I think that Skylar said this too in her lesson, that if you're working on something long, like a novel or I don't know, a book, you need like a separate group for that, people who are invested and gonna stay with you for the long haul. And that's not what a workshop group is. That's a separate thing. So short pieces that can stand alone. Probably your workshop group will have an established amount of time that you can share for, or number of pages, word count. So that's another question to ask up front. I renamed this section. Skylar had a better name for it in her lesson, and so I apologize because this is not representative of her phrasing. But I said here, compliment sandwich when giving feedback is useful. You want it to be thoughtful, and you don't want it to be superficial. Like you can't you can't compliment like a character name or a font. That is not helpful. But if you have something that you fear is like negative to say, which it shouldn't be, you shouldn't be making value judgments, and therefore any feedback should be positive, right? And by positive, I mean useful. So, say something nice before you lead into the critical bit, right? And the kind things you say should also be critical and not superficial. There shouldn't be any value judgments, which is hard to do, right? You don't want to say good or bad. You don't want to say like or dislike. And your criticism should be specific. I struggle with this, not the specificity, but with using the word like. I often find myself saying, I like how you did X, and then leading into my actual criticism. So like, I know it's hard, but that is also a way to think about it, right? I like how you did X. Here's my question, comment, concern. It needs to be specific. Otherwise, like vague advice or vague criticism doesn't help anyone. Here's an example. I think X works really well, but the thread is lost here. Or maybe we can add some components of X to this other part. As with things like conflict resolution, I would avoid saying you. I would say the narrator or the piece or the language. I wouldn't say, well, here you say, or you used X. I would say the piece uses X device, or the narrator said blank. You want to offer suggestions that aid the development of the issues you brought up. So if you really think something needs to be said, but you don't know how to fix it, we'll be careful with a circumstance like that, because pointing out problems without offering support or solutions can be dicey. So if we're being really thoughtful, not superficial, this is difficult to offer advice when you're not totally sure how to fix something that you see as a problem. So just be careful with your language when you do that. And again, not easy, but you've got a pen and paper, think it through. It seems to me that X is not fully formed as a concept. I wonder if we can do Y to support the development of X, right? Framing things as a question or as an I wonder can be a helpful way to, or a useful way to add feedback to something that maybe feels like you're giving negative thoughts. So like, I see X as a problem, whatever X is. I wonder if there is a solution in here somewhere, right? Ryan said something once, and I'm sure that he was quoting someone else, but he says, give in the spirit of helpfulness and receive in the spirit of helpfulness. Always assume that the rest of your group is there to be helpful, useful to you. And also always give advice, criticism, or responses to be helpful. You don't want to just say, I like X, or I dislike X, or I like or dislike, I just said that, or X is good or X is bad, because that's not giving help, right? Being nice isn't, and being complimentary and just liking a piece is great, but doesn't help the writer grow or the piece grow. Also, give the level of care to the other workshop participants that you want to receive. Golden rule, right? The most important thing, I think, this is going to be a short video. I have like 6 pages of notes and we're on the last one. Leave your personal taste behind. This can be really hard. I think we struggle to discern between personal taste and quality. And so it's important to know that, like, if you have a comment on word choice, it's probably not relevant. It's probably taste. If there's someone whose style or voice or whatever you really like, you can ask them outside of workshop for specific advice and say, I love how you use voice. Do you have any thoughts about my word choice or my voice or my style? Outside of workshop, though, because nitpicky things, which just never nitpick, especially word choice, they're going to get you bogged down and you're not going to get real advice out of it. And on the flip side, when you see something and you're not sure if it's an aesthetic complaint or criticism that you're going to give, think about how it would change the entire piece or the entire paragraph, right? If it's a word change, like, it's not going to change the entire piece. Also remember that when you're giving someone else advice, you're not giving you advice. They have their own tastes and aesthetic preferences, and they're not yours, no matter what. Whoever this person is, they don't have the same taste as you, at least not 100%. Additionally, I have entirely lost the train of thought because that one wasn't written down. It's really, really, I remembered. It's really, really useful, but not always allowed in workshop, to have the writer specifically state what they're looking for, which is another reason that it's useful to know what you're specifically looking for. So if you are able to, if it's allowed in your group, do say, actually, I'm not looking for that kind of feedback. Can you help me with X? But actually state it in advance if you're allowed to. Many groups let you, at the end, let the writer speak to their piece. So at that point, you can say, this is what I'm hoping to establish. Like, am I successful with X? Or what did you think was the moral of the story, or whatever? And that, the reason that it's more useful to do that at the beginning, of course, is you're going to get feedback specific to what you're looking for, rather than general feedback and then asking for specific feedback, and just takes more time. But that's why you want to know what kind of feedback you're looking for when you come into the group. Okay, when you're receiving feedback, you want to make sure you're not being defensive, and you will have the impulse to be like, no, somebody's giving you feedback and you're like, no, you just totally misunderstood this thing. That's not what's happening. It's useful to, tell yourself, they clearly misunderstood. Why did they misunderstand? You, at the end of the day, your work best. If the criticism is relevant, and you have final say. Take what works and leave what doesn't. Yeah, my last half page. It was really just a recap. It's not easy to give good feedback, and it's not necessarily easy to receive feedback, especially if it's not specific. or what you're looking for. And again, if it's too personal, the piece, any feedback will be hard to take. So it's not easy. You need to be intentional and thoughtful when giving feedback. And the best way that I have found to do that is to ask questions, which again is hard to do. And I try to give examples, but like I keep saying X and Y. So they're kind of terrible examples because they're not specific, but that is why later this month, we're going to do a live critique. It will be of me and it will be awkward. But asking questions like, why did you do X? Why did you make this choice? I wonder about the use of X. I'm interested in how X works, or observations, right? I noticed X theme. I wonder if that's intentional, or I noticed this thread seemed really important in the beginning, but it got lost. I wonder, if that's part of the dynamic going on here, or so that that is my advice when you're going into your. I was going to put my notebook away, but I still need it. When you're going into your first workshop, it's just try not to take anything personally. Nothing is specifically about you. People are responding to your work, and try to be really thoughtful in how you respond. I've been to a lot of groups where people just say, and I mean like still, where people just say, I loved it. This piece is perfect. You don't even need to be in workshop. And that's great. But the writer came because they didn't feel the work was complete. And so that's really, really nice to say. I'm not going to say don't say it, but it's going to be more useful to say maybe privately or in response to somebody saying something you disagree with. And that'll happen. And I think it's very, very useful too to disagree with people in workshop, politely, of course. If somebody gives a criticism and it's like it seems like they hated your favorite part, say that. Don't use those words, right? But if somebody says, hey, I wonder if you could change X to better benefit Y, and you're like, no, X needs to stay, then say that, respectfully disagree with what so-and-so said. I think that X is one of the strongest parts of the piece. And, if Y needs work, maybe consider a different route. I disagree with people a lot in workshop, and I've had people disagree about the feedback that I'm receiving. And it is really, really useful to have two or more thoughts on one thing, especially if like I thought I was really going to listen to so-and-so. It's somebody I really respect. I liked this element X, right? And they didn't, but I respect them. I really like their work. They usually give me really good feedback. And then, another person says, no, X is the best part. Like that's useful. Then I can wrestle with, what is the difference between the way that they're each receiving it? And that is probably going to be far more beneficial to me than just one point of view. So always disagree. If you disagree, don't disagree for fun. And two, if you just hate a piece, I mean, obviously don't say that, but pick out something that you think is the strongest point, even if you still think it's garbage, which like, don't be that guy. Don't think it's garbage. All art stands, right? Pick that strongest piece, examine, briefly, you don't have a ton of time, what is the best part of this piece that you like. And as your feedback, you can say, I think X was the strongest part of this piece, and I wonder if specific element of X can be used in other parts of the piece. It's never useful. And it sounds like giving compliments should be useful and should be something to do, but it's not useful to just be like, this is good. I love compliments. I love being praised, but I don't know what is good, right? I don't know what's working. I don't know what the weaker parts are. I don't know what the stronger parts are. I don't know, I found a good audience for me, but there are like poems and prose pieces that work in very different ways and have very different styles. And saying it's good or saying I like it is aesthetic. It's about how this thing appeals to me. It's not about the function of the piece. And that's the difference between good and bad quality feedback, right? It's about aesthetic and taste. And we've heard a million times, there's no accounting for, my cat just squeezed my hand in his lip. There's no accounting for taste, right? So you need to examine what you like about the thing when you're giving feedback about it. And, you know, my personal tastes are, I'm much more into wordplay than, this isn't even true, but just for the sake of this, I'm much more into wordplay than imagery. So I'm going to be having a really good time with an experimental piece where someone else is going to be scratching their head because people don't like experimental work. Meanwhile, you know, there's a piece that's just wholly aesthetic and full of imagery, and the point of the piece is imagery. And I'm probably going to be a little bored with it. And that's taste. That doesn't mean the piece isn't successful. So we need to be looking at the work as with the intention of the writer. That's far easier to do if you know the intentions of the writer, which is one of the reasons that I like to have the writer speak before we give feedback, right? But that's not traditional. It's very not traditional. That's anti-traditional. But you really need to see the piece and tell yourself maybe that this is this piece as a whole. This is what it is. How do I help it be more what it is, or more successful how it is? Not how do I make it something I like more? That's the real lesson. Be thoughtful and think about the piece as if it is a whole, and you're helping the piece be more its core, not more your taste. Happy time at your first workshop. Oh, sweetie, he squeezed me again, and I like it. Okay, fun things happening now at the Midwest Writing Center. We have all month, we have a collaboration with the Dead Poets Espresso in Moline. It's right off the bridge near the Mark and John Deere Pavilion. That cute little, like, there's like bars and shops in that little strip. So we had poets from all over the service area send us in work, and they are on display at Dead Poets Espresso. So go over there. They love writers. The decor is gorgeous. Check out the poems that are on display. They're very safe, by the way, with COVID. All the tables are way spaced out. They wear masks. In fact, all of the halo, all of the paintings on the wall are wearing masks, which I think is just the cutest thing in the world, including there's a Poe painting and there's a raven in it, and the raven is wearing a mask. It's adorable. But it's a gorgeous, gorgeous space. They have a courtyard and they love writing. So that's really cool. I got to go over there, take some pictures, which are on our social media. Check it out, and in our newsletter. And yeah, we've got great poets on display all month. That'll change in the middle of the month too, because we got so many submissions. So that's really exciting. So related to that, I'm so excited about this. Those people who submitted to that event will be featured in our next Spectra event. Spectra is our live poetry reading series. That'll be April 22nd here, live streaming. It's going to be the dopest. I am so excited that we have managed to make Poetry Month, National Poetry Month, this thing that has longevity, right? We're going to keep seeing these wonderful local poets do their thing, and our poets don't get enough attention. Again, I'm featuring those folks on our social media too. You can see pictures of the displays at Dead Poets Espresso. You can see excerpts from their work, and you can see their full poems on our social media. So that's cool to check out, especially live. 4/22, right here, Spectra Poetry Reading Series. Tomorrow, I'm very excited to tell you officially, we're going to have our first conference announcements. And I know I keep saying over and over again in these videos, I'm out of my mind excited about the conference this year. I cannot believe that I get to go. Like, I would pay so much money, and I'm working it. It feels like such a blessing. It's the coolest thing in the world. Of course, as always, we have financial support, tuition assistance for folks who maybe can't afford it. We will offer support with tech if anybody needs that. That'll be me. I am super scary to work with. So come prepared for me to be super mean. I really hope that folks who are watching this know that that's sarcasm. I'm really nice, I promise. On the 14th of this month, we're going to have a little spot on Living Local. So tune in then. We're going to be featuring some of the National Poetry Month stuff. It'll be really fun. That's on WHPF, the local CBS affiliate. One of the most exciting things happening right now is the Young Emerging Writers Internship applications are open. Those are due by May 15th, so get it together, but that's for local writers. Again, it's online, so anybody in the service area, we're going to try to work out, how to do some in-person outdoor stuff. But writers ages 15 to 19 who are interested in growing as writers, learning about graphic design, learning about putting a magazine together, learning about editing. It's a paid internship. I did it 15 years ago. And clearly it affected me greatly, or I wouldn't be here now. And another little teaser, we're going to have a live outdoor Roz Talks reading on May 22nd. That is my final announcement. I think I'm gonna go ahead and, I apologize, not do a writing prompt. Wow, I'm so sorry. Not do a free write today. I encourage you to go to that Bernadette Myers page and find one that suits you if you are jonesing for that free write. But my phone is not in this room and my cat is on my hand. So I guess those are excuses, but they're making it slightly harder for me to facilitate that. So as always, please write more light into your life. And hit us up if you have any questions, comments, concerns. Look out for all the goodies on social media, that conference announcement. Yeah, like I said, go have a great first workshop. And Writer Studio is the first and third Saturdays of the month. That's where we do our MWC workshop group. And you can have your first one with us. 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Central Time is when the Writer Studio is. First and third Saturday of the month, 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Now, officially, go write more light into your life.